Hi, this is Risa and welcome back to my Stitch Along series, and thank you for subscribing to my channel. This week I'm uploading a pattern and thread painting embroidery of a mini schnauzer, which took me about 3 weeks to complete. I hope it'll help those of you wanting to try your hand at thread painting. If you have some embroidery experience, you should be able to handle this. Let's get started. I decided to use silk Dupion as the fabric for the thread painting, as I wanted a sort of a nice sheen for the front of the cushion. However, you can use any good cotton fabric. I've traced the outline of the image of the dog from a reference photograph already onto the fabric using a light pad and heat erasable friction pen. I've also washed and ironed the fabric, and you can see that it still has some creases on it, which is normal for raw silk. I wanted to get that sort of rough texture as a background for my embroidery piece. In addition, I used a pinking scissor to sort of cut off the edges of the fabric so that it doesn't fray while I'm working on the piece. In addition, I applied some of this fray stop glue along the edges of the fabric. I'm planning to stitch a 16 by 16 inch cushion cover, and I've cut out an 18 by 18 inch piece of cloth and marked out sort of 16 inches here and 16 inches at the bottom, so you can see that I have sufficient allowance to stitch the cushion cover when the embroidery piece is done. Now I'm going to mount the fabric on a 6-inch hoop, and here are all the DMC threads that I will be using, and they've all been listed in the description below, and I'll be going through them one by one as I stitch the dog. Now here is a thread organizer that you might be interested in getting online. I'm going to start the thread painting with DMC 413, which is a dark gray shade of color for the nose. That's going to be the base color, and then I'll start adding highlights as we go along. So to start off, I'm going to start without knotting the thread on the front of the fabric, like so, and make a few stab stitches to arrest the thread. So you can also start from the back, but I generally start from the front so I don't have to turn the hoop over. This makes it more convenient. And since it's thread painting, a lot of those little stitches will be covered. Now, a key thing about thread painting is the direction of the stitch. So I've kind of looked at the reference photograph and have determined that the stitch is downwards from the top line of the nose. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm stitching long and short stitches for the base color here. I'm moving on to DMC 310 to start shading the nose, and as you can see, I am stitching over the gray background. So this sort of helps me leave some of the gray where I need, for example, a definition of the line for the nose, and at the same time I get the shading that I want. I'll be using much of this technique throughout the embroidery process here, where I will be using a background color and then shading it with the highlights over that background color. The next thing to stitch is the eye when you're thread painting an animal. So I'm going to start with a white thread and then move on to black and shades of gray. So that will be DMC 3865, 310, which is the black, 414 and 415 gray highlights. For the snout, I'm going to use DMC 413, which is the darkest gray, and then 414 for highlights. I've decided to stitch the background hair growing downwards and then use the highlights to show the overall direction of the hair on top of that. I'm starting to stitch the hair under the eyelid, and here you can see that I'm stitching backwards under the eye line, and this is to ensure that I don't accidentally stitch some of the dark gray onto the eye. And same for the nose area. I'm sort of starting with back stitches under the nose line here, and then I'll move on to sort of normal long and short stitches facing forward. I'm jumping forward with the video. I've finished a few highlights in the snout with DMC 414 and 03, and you can see that the hair is sort of a bit random right now, but all of that will even out when we start stitching the threads over it using the highlighted colors. I've completed the whiskers with random stitches here, and then I'll move on to white and cream here for his beard, but I'll first start with the puff of hair here on his brow. I've jumped forward with the video. I'm going to use 3774 to put highlights over the white and cream strands of hair on the beard that I've started stitching. I've completed some of the base color with DMC 822, and I'm going to try and finish the beard area first before I move to his neck. here I've completed the white on top of the cheek and some 822 cream and gray shades here as background. And now I'll move on to stitching the rest of the cheek area here. I've turned the hoop around to start working on the forehead area. It's just easier this way to get the direction of the hair correct. I'm going to start with a background of 413 and then 414, and I'm going to leave the brow area for now. I'll use 415 and 02 as highlights over this area. I'm going to start using 413 to start working on the top of the ear here. As you can see, I've turned the hoop around, and when you do that, the advantage is that you can see the directions of your stitches, and you can add stitches where you need to. For example, here I see that in the brow I just have these white swigs sticking out, but when you look at the reference picture, it sort of turns a little bit here, so I added a few stitches to give that blended, smooth look, and then I blended a few more sort of coloring here on the top cheek area. I've finished stitching the eyes here with 310 black and 413 gray, and for the second brow I've used 822, 415 gray and the 3865 white. I've jumped forward with the video again, and I've completed the dog tag and the collar here with satin stitches, and I have done the neck with 02, 414, 413 and 310 black in a blended fashion, and here I'm going to stitch 413 again for the rest of the neck area and highlight it with 414 and 03. To finish off, I'm going to frame the thread painting with some silk metallic thread 005, some 4mm silk ribbon, cream, white and red, and I'm going to use a single strand of white floss to finish the French knots here. The pattern for the framing is also available in the description below. Here I'm starting with simple stem stitch with the metallic thread, and then I'm going to move on to using the same metallic thread to stitch the leaves here with long and short stitches. I'm going to start the flower with the cream 4mm silk ribbon using ribbon stitches like so, and then move on with the second layer of a 4mm white ribbon. And finally, to the rose swig, I'm going to stitch simple ribbon stitch and straight stitches here for the buds with the 4mm red ribbon. And for the rose in the center, it's essentially just simple woven rose, where you bring in the ribbon in the center, enter one of the spokes, so you go under, over. So make sure you have 5 of these threaded spokes to be able to weave your rose in and out. And to end off, Essentially, you just stitch straight stitches in the corners like so of the ribbon. And there we have it. I've completed my thread painting of the mini Schnauzer. I hope it was useful for you too. Don't forget to click on the subscribe, like and notification buttons. See you again next time. Bye bye.